So a very pleasant morning to one and all present here. Today the topic we are going to discuss is about denture based resins. So under denture based resins we are going to see a brief intro, followed by which we are going to see about the requirements, requirements of the denture based material, the history behind it, the various advantages of the commonest denture based resin what we are using, which is nothing but polymethyl methacrylate, the polymerization reaction which is involved in this material, the composition of the denture based resins, the various manipulation techniques, the physical properties, the various recent advances, and the various other applications of denture based resins apart from the denture bases. A brief summary followed by which we can see about the references. So before getting into the denture based resins, we must know what a resin is. Also we must know what a polymer and a monomer is. Yes, because all these denture based resins which we are going to talk about come under a broader heading, which is dental polymers. So only when we have a basic idea as to what a polymer is, what a resin is, we will be able to understand this denture based resins much more clearer and much more better. So what is a resin? Resin is nothing but a very natural or synthetic substance that is going to form a plastic material after polymerization. And this resin is of different types based on the composition, physical structure, based on how the polymerization is taking place. The resin is going to be of different types. Yes, and so from this word polymerization, what we have to know is what a polymer is. So polymer is nothing but a group of natural or synthetic materials, which are composed of larger molecules built from smaller repeating units. Fine. So here you can see that it is a larger molecule which is comprised of many smaller molecules. Fine. So this smaller individual units which you can see here, yes, so all these are called the monomers. These monomers add on to give a polymer. Fine. And the method by which this monomer is adding on to give you a polymer can take place by two ways, either by addition polymerization or by condensation polymerization. Fine. So now before getting into denture based resins, another thing which you have to understand is what a denture is, what a denture base is, and then about the various denture based materials. Fine. So what is a denture? Denture is nothing but an artificial substitute for replacing the missing natural teeth and its adjacent tissues. And then what is a denture base? It is a part of denture that is going to rest on the foundation tissues, and it is over this denture base that your teeth are going to be attached. The prosthesis teeth are going to be attached. Fine. And the material with which this denture base is made of is called the denture base material. Fine. So here in this image you can see that here you have a patient, for whom there are many teeth which are missing. So now this is replaced by a prosthesis or a denture. So apart from the teeth, you also have this denture base. So the material with which this denture base is made is what we are going to see about in the coming slides. Yes. So for a material to be used as a denture based material, there are certain requirements which has to be satisfied. Like it has to be tasteless. You can't put it inside the mouth and the patient says it has some odor, it is not tasting, so he cannot complain all that. So it has to be tasteless, it has to be odorless, it has to be non-toxic, it has to be non-irritant, it has to be aesthetically satisfactory. You can't give some material which is black in color or dark reddish in color, no. So aesthetically also it should be satisfying for the patient. It should be transparent and translucent so that the light can easily pass through, and you should be able to pigment it based on the patient's color of the gingiva and so on. And it has to be dimensionally stable, because after putting in the mouth and the patient is eating hot foods, the patient is eating cold foods, it should not change its dimensions. It has to be stable. and it should have sufficient strength, resilience, also abrasion resistance. Like patients using their dentures, naturally they can brush it, they can drop it down, they keep using it for years together, they keep clenching the teeth. So during all these actions, we should see to it that they have adequate strength, resilience and resistance to abrasion. Fine. So next, they should be insoluble and impermeable to oral fluids. The specific gravity of this material has to be low, okay, and the softening temperature of this material should be well above the temperature of the materials what is going to reach inside your mouth. And you should be able to fabricate it very easily. It should be cost effective, it should have a good thermal conductivity, it should be radio opaque. Fine. So like that you have so many requirements, and people have been searching numerous different materials which will satisfy all these requirements, and there is no material which is going to satisfy all these requirements. Okay, so we keep searching, we have evolved through years to get to a denture based material which is now being recently used for the people. Okay, so to see this evolution as to evolution of these denture based materials, we have to briefly see about the history behind this. Yes, so okay, so if you see, you have the initially dating back to around 2500 BC, you had this Mexican dentures. Okay, all the animal teeth were used in this dentures. Fine, this was around say 2500 BC. Then came the Etruscan dentures in 700 BC during the pre-Roman civilization. Okay, they again use animals' teeth. Also, they use teeth from humans who were dead, and they used to bond it together with the help of gold bands. Fine. Then we had Mayan dentures, which are again around 600 BC. So these Mayans, you can see that they use stones and seashells. The stones and seashells were carved to the shape of the natural teeth, and then they were used to replace the missing teeth. Fine. And again Egyptians around 300 BC, they use gold. Okay, gold was used, and also silver wires were used to hold the replaced teeth in position. Fine. Then around 15th century, the wooden dentures came into use. Okay, wooden dentures. But you know, naturally wooden dentures, as they absorb moisture, they are going to become unstable. Aesthetically the color is not going to be good. Yes, so all this is going to be there. So then slowly the ivory dentures came into use around the 17th century. Fine. So it was like a combination of animal teeth, human teeth, ivory, like, and they used to bind it together by means of springs and gold wires. Then it was only around the 18th century that something called vulcanite came into use. So it was initially the porcelain teeth, and that porcelain teeth were placed in vulcanite denture based material. Right? So here in the image you can see that this is a denture which is made up of porcelain teeth. The denture base is made up of gold. Okay, so you have gold denture base, and then you have porcelain teeth which are placed into the vulcanite. Yes, the palate is made up of gold, the palatal portion, but whereas the teeth are getting embedded into the vulcanite material, which is then reinforced over the gold plate. Yes, so it was this vulcanite in 1850, okay, which paved way for cheaper dentures. Even the middle class people were able to afford this dentures. But again, vulcanite had its own disadvantages. Okay, it was dimensionally unstable, it had unpleasant taste, odor and all this. Okay, so here you can see this is nothing but George Washington. He had also been using dentures. Okay, so this image what you are seeing is a denture which was worn by George Washington. Okay, so you can see that the palate is savage from the sheet of gold, and you have ivory teeth riveted to it. Fine. So if you see the lower denture, it is a single block of ivory, and you can see that both the upper and the lower denture, they are joined together by means of a spring. And who made it? It was John Greenwood. Fine. So this is all of historical importance of dentures. Okay. So here you can see this is a porcelain denture, where the entire denture base and the teeth both are made up of porcelain. Okay. So here this is a set of vulcanite dentures, okay, which was worn by General John J. Pershing. He was a commander-in-chief in the American forces, okay, especially during the World War I. The commander of that American army, he was wearing this vulcanite dentures. Okay, so then followed by vulcanite, you had vulcanite, you had porcelain, and then now you had cellulite after that. It was like around 1880. It was a better substitute for vulcanite. Okay, but however, again, it also had bad stains, bad odors, and it was sometimes, you know, inflammable. And because of all this, again, people were in search of newer materials. Okay, so it was only in the year 1937 that Walter Wright gave dentistry the most useful resin. Okay, so he introduced the material called polymethyl methacrylate, which has a short form PMMA, and this was tested. So it's this 1937 or 1930s, you call it a era of the PMMA resin. Fine. So now I have been telling you this PMMA. So what are the main advantage of these resins when compared to the various other materials which have been used through all these years? Like they have been using various natural teeth, teeth from the animals, teeth from dead humans. They have been using porcelain, they have been using vulcanite, they have been using cellulite. Okay, so overall that this denture based resins had several advantages. Okay, so like mechanically, their transverse strength was good, the impact strength was good, modulus of elasticity was high, proportional limit was high, the abrasion resistance was good, the material was able to maintain the polish for a long time, patients were able to maintain it in a clean and hygienic manner, it was radio opaque. Fine. And physically, if you see, the thermal coefficient of expansion of this denture based material was equal to that of the tooth material. Okay, it was able to conduct heat through it, and the density was very low, which means it was weightless for the patients. Okay, and its melting point was significantly higher than the ingested foods and drinks, so the dimensional changes were not going to take place. Fine. So all these are the advantages, and the most important advantage of this PMMA resin is that it is biocompatible, inert, non-toxic, non-irritant, insoluble in oral fluids, and it is non-absorbent. So various other materials you can see like cellulite or vulcanite, they were stainable. Okay, any people getting used to tea or coffee or any pigmented pigments coming in contact with the dentures is going to stain the denture, but that wasn't seen in this PMMA resins. Fine. The various other disadvantages of these denture based resins is that its cost is significantly low. Okay, imagine a person having all teeth made up of ivory or savaged with gold, or you have vulcanite teeth savaged in the gold denture base. So all this is going to be definitely costly when compared to your denture based resin. So this had a low cost, low maintenance, it was pigmentable. Like for different patients you can use different pigments and bring about the natural aesthetics. Okay, also manufacturing of this was very easy, it was translucent, even if you had to repair this denture it was possible. Yes. So once now we have seen the several advantages, now we have to see about the polymerization reaction of these resins, how these resins are formed, what is the basic polymerization or the chemistry behind this denture based resins. So the key word is addition. Yes, how? I told you resins are nothing but dental polymers, and what a polymer is, it's a larger molecule made up of repeating units of smaller molecules. So numerous monomers together, they are going to give together a polymer. Yes, and it can either be addition or it can be condensation type of polymerization. So here in PMMA it is addition kind of polymerization, where the monomers keep adding to one another without giving out any byproduct. Fine. Now this reaction between two molecules form a larger molecule without formation of byproducts is called as addition polymerization. Now this addition polymerization again is of two types. Either there can be a carbon-carbon double bond unit, which is what we are going to see here in Dense Essence. You also have something called ring opening, where you will have two carbons and one nitrogen, or it is two carbons and one oxygen. But here in PMMA it is carbon-carbon double bond units, which we are going to see about. So about this we will see in the coming slides. Yes, and this addition polymerization is also called a free radical polymerization. Why? Because for this addition to continue, for this monomer to add on to one another and form a polymer, a free radical is needed. Okay, there has to be an initiator, and this initiator has to be activated to release a polymer, to release a free radical. Okay, and this free radical joins to the monomer, forms a polymer, and that attracts another monomer, and the chain continues. Okay, so that is why it is called a free radical polymerization. So the basic behind this is there is an initiator. This initiator, when it gets activated, releases a free radical. This free radical binds with the monomer, forms a polymer, which again continues to bind with more and more monomers until all the monomer gets used up and the chain formation stops. Yes, so the initiator here is benzoyl peroxide. Okay. Now, how this chain occurs, how this polymerization occurs. Okay, so how is it the initiation occurs, how the activation occurs, what is the initiator, and how the chain is going to propagate, and how the chain is going to grow, how the chain is going to terminate. So all this, okay, are the different stages. All these are the stages, chemical stages in polymerization. So broadly speaking, you can classify them into induction, propagation, chain transfer, or termination. Fine, either the chain stops or the chain gets transferred. There is induction, the chain propagates, and then after propagation the chain either can stop, there is termination, or the chain can get transferred to some other chain. Fine. Okay. So now let us see about each step in detail. So first is the induction, where you are going to have the initiation. Yes, so the initiator gets energized or activated. Fine, and based on what is activating that initiator, based on what activator is used to initiate the initiator, you have three different types of denser base resins. You have heat activated denser base resins, you have light activated denser base resins, you have chemically activated denser base resins, and based on the names, you know, in heat activated it is heat which is going to activate the initiator, and in light activation it is light which is going to activate the initiator, and in chemical activation you are going to have a chemical which is going to activate the initiator. Fine. Next, the addition of monomer molecules to this free radical and shifting of this free radical to the end of the chain. As it keeps attaching, the free radical gets attached to the end of the chain. So this is called propagation. Next, you have termination. Yes, how does it terminate? The termination of the chain occurs either by direct coupling or exchange of hydrogen atoms between the growing chains. When two chains contact each other and there is exchange of hydrogen atoms, or when there is direct coupling, the termination of that propagated chain occurs. Or sometimes what happens is the chain termination will occur by means of chain transfer. Okay, so the active state of a chain gets transferred to some inactive molecule, and this chain stops, but whereas that inactive site which was already there, that becomes an active nucleus. Right? So we will see the pictorial representation of these 4 stages now in the coming slides. Okay, as I told you, induction is the first step. You have an initiator and this gets converted to a free radical by means of an activator. Fine. Fine. So here this RR, which is benzoyl peroxide, when it gets energized by means of a chemical or by means of heat, it bonds together to form 2R by release of a free radical. This black dot what you see is the free radical, and this is the chemical structure of the benzoyl peroxide. So this is how it is after activation. Once it gets activated, a free radical gets released. Now this free radical combines with the monomer, which is polymethyl methacrylate. So when this free radical combines with the monomer, okay, you can see that a bigger molecule is formed. Now this combines with the next monomer, again a free radical gets released. So this chain continues, okay, and this propagation will continue until all the monomer is getting used up, or there is going to be a chain transfer or termination. Fine. So here in chain transfer, what is happening? You can see in chain, I told you how the chain transfer is going to take place by means of exchange of hydrogen atoms between the two, or by formation of a bond between two molecules. Yes. So here you can see this is a monomer and this is a propagated chain. So they both combine together, okay, form a double bond, okay, and they release a molecule here, the free radical. So this chain is going to stop, this chain is going to stop, and this will become an active site for initiation of the next polymerization reaction. Fine. So termination. Termination, I told you how it is going to occur. It's by the exchange of hydrogen atoms from the growing chain to other, or by direct coupling of two radicals. So here you can see there are two free radicals, they both join together and then there is a coupling between the two free radicals. There are two molecules with free radicals, they join together and then they terminate, or there can be a transfer of hydrogen atom. Fine. Okay. So now whenever you have a activator, you should also have an inhibitor in polymerization. Yes or no? So what are all the inhibitors? What is it that can prevent polymerization reaction? So as we all know, any impurities present, okay. So whenever there are any impurities in the denture base resin, or there is presence of oxygen, okay, and another important compound which is hydroquinone. So all these three together will inhibit the polymerization. Fine. Next, another thing you have to know here is cross-linking. Like say you have many different chains of polymerization taking place, and one chain gets connected to another chain by means of cross-linking. And the main cross-linking agent which we use here in PMMA resin is glycol dimethacrylate. So what is the advantage of this cross-link? So when it gets cross-linked, you know, the strength is going to increase, the solubility and water absorption, all this is going to decrease. So basically the physical properties increase by means of cross-linking. Fine. Next, now we will see the composition of these denture base resins. So I told you, based on the activator used, we have three different types, and you also have some other types. So first let us see about the heat activated denture base resin. In heat activated denture base resin, you are going to have two components. You are going to have a liquid or monomer, and then you are going to have a powder or a polymer. So in liquid, what is it you have? In liquid, you are going to have methyl methacrylate, dibutyl phthalate, glycol dimethacrylate, which is a cross-linking agent, and you will also have hydroquinone, which acts as an inhibitor. So when you store these monomer in a bottle, that should not polymerize, right? So for that you will be adding this hydroquinone. Then in the powder you are going to have polymethyl methacrylate, you are going to have the initiator benzoyl peroxide, okay. You are going to have certain dyes, opacifiers, plasticizers, and organic and inorganic fillers in the form of glass fibers, beads, and other aesthetic fillers. So next we are going to come to chemically activated denture based resins. So these chemically activated denture based resins is otherwise called self-cure resins or auto-polymerizing resins. Okay. So here if you see, the liquid will contain methacrylate, okay, and then an extra extra component you have to remember here is dimethyl paratoluidine, okay. So as I told you, heat is the activator in heat activated resin, but whereas in chemically activated resin the activator is a chemical. So what chemical are we using here? It is dimethyl paratoluidine. So apart from that, all the other components are same, like you have dibutyl phthalate, you have glycol dimethacrylate, and then you have hydroquinone. And powder has polymethyl methacrylate, benzoyl peroxide, dyes, opacifiers, and plasticizers. So the powder is almost the same for heat cure and self cure. It's only the activator which is different for both heat cure and self cure. Okay. Apart from that, now you also have light activated denture based resins. Okay. So what is a light activated denture based resin? The activator here is light, and initiator here is not benzoyl peroxide but camphoraquinone. Okay. So camphoraquinone is the initiator and the activator is light. You also add to it certain fillers, like which can be organic like acrylic resin beads, or it can be inorganic in the form of silicon dioxide. The basic matrix here in light activated denture based resins is not polymethyl methacrylate, but it is polyether urethane dimethacrylate. Instead of PMMA, we are going to add polyether urethane dimethacrylate. So as you can see in the figure, it is available in the form of sheets. Okay, so you have to adapt it over the cast, shape it to the desired form, and then cure it inside the curing unit. Okay, you also have something called microwave activated resin. So in the diagram you can see a microwave. So there is a specialized flask for this. So this you will keep inside the microwave and the resin gets polymerized. Okay, so the electromagnetic waves are used for activating the resin. Okay, and the flask is a special glass fiber reinforced flask, so that the waves can easily pass in. Okay, and the energy used here is 500 to 600 watts, and curing time is very short, say around 3 minutes. Okay, the main advantage, so here you can see curing time is very less, so that's the main advantage, and the dimensional accuracy is also very good, and physical properties are equally good as your heat cure resins. The disadvantage is that initially the flask and oven, all that which you have to buy, capital is going to cost you more, and flasks again can fracture easily, so you have to be careful in handling it, and if you don't control the temp, watts and all and timing, and there are chances of porosities, right? So now let us see the manipulation techniques. So I told you there are different types of resins, and these resins you also can manipulate it differently, okay, using different manipulation techniques, and we'll see about each. So broadly speaking, you can classify this manipulation based on the manipulation techniques. You can say you have compression molding, you have injection molding, you have fluid resin technique, you have visible light curing, and then you also have microwave. Fine. Okay. So in compression molding technique, what you do? First you have to prepare the mold space. Fine. So you can see this is how mold space is created, and this mold space you will be adding the separating medium. Okay, once the separating medium is added to the mold space, then you have to take the resin with based on the manufacturer's instructions. A proper powder liquid ratio has to be used, and so that the polymer and the monomer mix with each other, and you form a dough, pack it inside, you bench cure it, and then you go for a polymerization. Then you bench cool it, then you deflask it, then you trim it, polish it, and insert it in the patient. So here you can see this is how the mold is prepared. So you can see that this is a waxed up denture, and this is a flask which is going to have three parts. You are going to have a base, and then you are going to have a cope, and then you are going to have a lid. So over the base you will place this waxed up denture, and once the flasking is done here in the lower base, you will place the cope, and then over that you will place the, again you will pour plaster, and then over that you place the lid, and then you do dewaxing. Once dewaxing is done, you open the flask again, and then you remove all the wax, and then you apply the separating medium. Fine. So separating medium, various materials have been used. Initially tin foil was used, but it was like quite difficult, time consuming, and it was difficult, technique sensitive, and so now we are having various tin foil substitutes, like you have cellulose lacquers, and then you have alginate solutions, soap, sodium silicate, starch, and all. So the most commonly used separating medium here we are using is soluble alginate, which is sodium alginate or potassium alginate. It also has certain preservatives, glycerin, alcohol, and it's balanced with water. Okay. So the main setting reaction, if you see in this this alginate will react. Okay. This alginate will react with the calcium sulfate, which is there in the plaster of Paris, will form calcium alginate. So this acts as a layer over the mold space. So and then potassium sulfate comes out. Yes. So the main function is that it prevents water from the mold to reach the resin. So water from the mold space will not reach the resin. Yes. And also the monomer which is present in the resin will not be escaping out into the mold space. Fine. But certain precautions has to be taken, like when you apply the separating medium, it has to be uniformly applied. The dewaxing what you do has to be thorough. You should not have any layer of wax anywhere, and this separating medium what you are applying, you should not apply it over the teeth, then that will interfere with the bonding of teeth with the resin. Yes. And when you talk about powder liquid ratio, you have to follow the manufacturing instructions. You can't add too much of powder, okay, because if you have too much of powder, then polymerization is not going to take place. When you have too much of monomer, there is going to be excessive polymerization, shrinkage, which is going to take place. Yes. So only if you follow the proper manufacturing instructions, proper powder liquid ratio, which is around 3:1 polymer to monomer, then you can reduce the shrinkage from 21% to 7%. Yes. And linear shrinkage can be reduced to 0.5%. So for us to have the exact dimensional reproducibility of the dentures, we should always follow proper powder liquid ratio. Okay. Now how do you add? Now see in this diagram you can see that we are packing this polymer monomer mix into the mold space. Yes. So how do you do that? Okay. So you will have to mix the powder and the liquid, make it a workable mask, and this will happen in 5 stages. Initially you have a sand-like stage, then you will have a stringy stage, okay, then you have a smooth dough-like stage. It's at this stage you have to pack. Okay. So it's only in this dough stage that it is not tacky, okay, it is not sticking to your hand, it is not sticking to your spatula. So it is at this stage you have to use. You can't next stage, if you leave this stage, then it goes to a rubbery stage. Okay, and in the rubbery stage you can see the material will start rebounding clinically. Okay, and you can't use it in that stage. Then it goes for a stiff stage where you can't manipulate only, and all the monomer has already evaporated. So again this stage also cannot be used for curing. Okay, so the usual time required for a mix to reach a dough like stage is called the dough forming time, and it's around 10 minutes. Okay, and the working time but however is only around 5 minutes. Okay, so again you can't pack it too early, like in the sandy stage and all. If you pack it, you will have porosities. If If you do it in the rubbery stage, then it will not flow only, it will not flow into the spaces. And always don't overpack it, okay, because if you overpack it, you will end up giving too much pressure and it can displace the teeth. And if you do underpacking, naturally you are going to have porosities, right? So once you've done all the packing, okay, you will use a bench press and you allow it for bench curing. Okay, leave it under bench cure for around an hour, so that there is uniform distribution of monomer throughout the entire mass. Fine. So this is how is it. So the mole space is prepared. To it you are applying the separating medium and then you are packing it with the polymer monomer mix in the dough stage, okay, and then you will do a trial process, remove all the excess. Fine. Then you will pack it, bench hydraulic press can be used or a mechanical press can be used, and then you allow it for bench curing for around an hour, okay. Then you will place it in water and cure it by means of heat, because it's a heat activated resin, you will have to use heat as an activator. And the polymerization cycle, if you see, okay, you have two types of cycles. Either you can do a long curing or you can do a short curing. So how do you do it? Okay, so in slow curing, what you do is you use a constant temperature water bottle, which is say at 74 degrees Celsius. So you heat it in that for 8 hours or longer with no terminal boiling point. Or another method is, at 74 degrees Celsius you will heat it for 8 hours and then you will increase it to 100 degrees Celsius for an hour. Okay. Now this is long curing cycle, but whereas in short curing cycle or a fast curing cycle, what you do is the same 74 degrees Celsius you use, but it is only for 2 hours, and then you raise it to 100 degrees Celsius and again cure it for 1 hour. Fine. So once you do that, then you have to allow it for bench cooling, okay, because rapidly you open it, because it's hot and you just open it without bench cooling, what happens, there will be warpage, because so much stress which is inside, you release all of a sudden and there is going to be warpage. Yes, so you will have to allow it for bench curing for around 30 minutes, followed by bench cooling. You will immerse it in tap water for around 15 minutes. Right? So the next technique we are going to see about is injection molding technique. Okay. In injection molding technique, again you can't use the same flask which we have been using for compression molding. We have to have a specialized equipment for this, and from the name we know the material is going to be injected into the mold space. There we packed it. In compression we packed it and then we compressed it. In injection molding we are going to inject the material and then cure it under some pressure. Okay. The resins which we are going to use for injection molding are made up of mainly nylon or polycarbonate. Okay, and this material is usually in the gel form or putty form, and naturally the material is costly, the equipment is costly, but however craze resistance in this is very low, the shrinkage is very low. Yes, so here you can see this is an instrument which a specialized instrument, or the flask which we use for injection molding. So you can see the denture, the waxed up denture placed inside this flask, and this flask is there are sprues attached to this. Okay, so then you counter pour it, okay, fill it with POP. You have dewaxed it and created the mold space, okay, and then you close it. This is how it is. Okay, so through this sprues the injected material will flow into the mold space, right? So the advantage is that the dimensional accuracy is good. There is no need for trial closure. You can use it for all pore type resins, you can use it for the microwavable resins, but the main drawback is that you need specialized instruments which are of course costly, and we have to see to it that sufficient spruing is there, otherwise you will have technical errors, right? Then another technique what we use is called fluid resin technique. Okay, so which you can employ mainly for the pourable resins. Okay, but here the powder liquid ratio is slightly different. Instead of 3:1, it is 2.5:1 by weight. Fine. So this is a flask what we will be using. So here you can see, okay, this is a specialized flask which we have been using for the fluid resin, and the wax lip denture is placed. Okay, and then we will use a reversible hydrocolloid material like agar, and then a mold space is created, and into this mold space the resin is poured, and then this is how you retrieve the denture. The main advantage is that the adaptation is very good, the cost is also less, and it is a simple procedure. But the main disadvantage is that sometimes the teeth can shift, and entrapment is a common problem with this type of technique, and again it is technique sensitive, right? So now we have seen the manipulation technique. So the next thing we are going to see about is the important physical properties we must know in relation to denture based materials. So some of the most important properties we are going to see in this denture based materials is polymerization shrinkage, porosity, water solubility, processing stress, and crazing. So when we talk about the polymerization shrinkage, okay, the amount of polymerization shrinkage from the table, you can see that the amount of shrinkage taking place is least in the high impact acrylic resin, and it's maximum in the heat cure denture based resin. Heat cure denture based resin has the maximum or the highest amount of polymerization shrinkage. Yes. And the other thing is, when you see about chemically activated resins, okay, they have a dimensional accuracy of 0.1%, and they are found to be more accurate than your heat cure. Why? Because the shrinkage is more in heat cure. Fine. Yes, you have visible light cure resins. They have been found to be more accurate than your conventional heat cure resins. Fine. Next, the other thing they say is that when you use injection molding technique, okay, the use of injection molding technique, the change in VD is very less when you use an injection molding technique. It's more better. Okay, and microwave resins, autopolymerizing resins, and light cure resins are much more better when compared to the rapid heat cure resins and the conventional resins in terms of fit. Okay, and when you generally speaking about the fit or accuracy was much better in the anterior part of the denture, and worst in the posterior part, mainly because of the polymerization shrinkage and warpage taking place. So another important physical property which we are going to see is porosity. Okay, so you can have numerous porosities in the denture, and this porosity is a very complex phenomenon. It can occur because of multiple factors. Okay, an error anywhere in the processing stage or in the finishing stage or packing stage, so it can occur anywhere. If your powder liquid ratio was not proper, if you have not de-waxed properly, if you have applied too much pressure while doing bench press, okay, if you have not cured properly, so anywhere the reason for porosity can arise. Right? And when you have a porosity filled denture, it is susceptible to distortion, it is susceptible to warpage, yes, and aesthetically also it is not pleasing. Yes. Now this porosity is, broadly speaking, you can classify them into two types. You have internal porosity and then you have external porosity. Right? So internal porosity is nothing but voids or bubbles within the resin, within the denture base. So you will not be able to clinically feel it. Though you will be able to see it, you cannot feel it. So it is not on the surface of the denture, and usually you see it on the thickest portions of the denture base. Fine. And it may not occur equally throughout the affected area. So the main reason for this internal porosity is when the monomer starts boiling. Okay, when there is vaporization of the monomer, or when the temperature of the resin is more than the boiling point of the monomer, or very low molecular weight polymers. So basically if the polymerization cycle is not followed properly, if you are going to rapidly heat the rapidly raise the temperature during curing, you can have internal porosities, especially in the thickest portions of the denture. Yes. So next you have external porosities. The main reason for external porosity is that you have not mixed the polymer and monomer properly. You have not used sufficient material, okay, when mixing. That can be a reason. Okay. So how you avoid is, you have to use a proper liquid powder ratio, follow the manufacturing instructions, pack it in the dough stage. Okay. It's all technique sensitive. Okay. And you have to, if you don't have adequate pressure, you have to apply adequate amount of pressure. Fine. Also, always see, like when packing, always see if excess flash is coming out from the flask. So that is one indication that you have used sufficient amount of material. Fine. Next, the other important property we are going to see about is crazing. Crazing is nothing but small surface cracks which you can see on the denture base. Again, this is not going to be aesthetically pleasing, and it's going to have a weakening effect on the denture, because crazing can further get deteriorated and can lead to fracture. Yes. And why is this crazing occurring? It's because of the various mechanical stress which the denture base is subjected to, or when it is attacked by some solvent, or when some water is getting incorporated into the denture, you can have this crazing effect. Okay. So in this figure you can see this is how a crazing looks. Okay, so you have a porcelain teeth, you have the denture base, and you can see around the porcelain teeth you have crazing. Yes. So how can you avoid crazing is, you have to use cross-linked acrylics containing glycol dimethoxylate. You have to use metal molds, and then tin foil separating mediums also aid in preventing the crack propagation. Okay. Next is water absorption. So one thing you have to know about water absorption is that acrylic resins absorb water, and the water absorption is around 0.6 milligram per centimeter square, and yes, after absorbing water they expand. Okay. So this water absorption partially compensates for the polymerization shrinkage which usually takes place in the denture based materials, but however this water absorption property is reversible, so it's not going to have much effect on the physical properties of the denture based material. And to avoid this, what you have to do is, repeated wetting and drying, that has to be avoided. Okay. And however, when you compare this polymethyl methacrylate with polyvinyl acrylic resin, PMMA has high water absorption when compared to polyvinyl acrylic resins. Okay. So the more the thicker it is, okay, the more water it absorbs. So temperature also, to some range, it affects the rate of water absorption. Okay, but always see that the denture based material what you are using is not having a water absorption value of more than 0.8 milligram per square centimeter. Okay, then PMMA has 0.6, but always good you have it less than 0.8, not more than that. Okay, but however this PMMA is resistant to acids, bases, and various other organic solvents when it is getting exposed to. So the next property we are going to see about is solubility. So polymethyl methacrylate is virtually insoluble. It is insoluble in the fluids in our oral cavity. Though they are soluble in ketones, esters, aromatic and fluorinated hydrocarbons, we are not going to encounter them in our day-to-day life, so it's not a big problem to worry about. Okay. But sometimes they say alcohol may cause crazing in some resins, but the recent resins which have been introduced nowadays with several reinforcements, they resist alcohol crazing. Right. So another important property which we are going to see about is processing stress. Yes. So all materials are subjected to some amount of stress while processing. Yes. So whenever the natural dimensional change in a material is inhibited, it is going to have stress, and that stress, when it is released, what happens? You are going to have a warpage, or you are going to have a dimensional change in the prosthesis. Yes. So when you keep repeatedly drying and wetting the denture, it can introduce certain kind of stress. Also while you're doing deflasking, while curing, okay, while curing, uh, all this can induce some amount of stress in the denture based material. Fine. Also, because of the during packing, if you see the difference in coefficient of thermal expansion between the plaster of Paris and your acrylic, again that can also induce some amount of stress. Yes. So the next property which we are going to see here is impact strength. So naturally, the traditional polymethyl methacrylate resins have reduced impact strength. So here in the table you can see that the heat cure resin has a very low impact strength, but whereas when you reinforce it with certain materials, you can see that the impact strength has considerably increased. Then if you see the fatigue strength, okay, fatigue strength of rubber reinforced resins was highest. Okay, and if you see the fracture toughness, again fracture toughness is high for heat cure, but whereas it is least for the pore type of acrylic resins. Okay, and then there is another property called compressive creep. Okay, creep is nothing but the property of the denture based material to deform under load. Okay, so whenever a material under load is deforming with time, you call it as creep. Okay, so for the heat polymerized materials, the creep value was least, but however chemically activated resins had a highest creep value. So over the time, their deformation was very fast in the self-cure resins. Okay, so these are some of the properties which are very important in terms of denture based resins. So next, let us see the recent advances. So I told you the impact strength is considerably low with the conventional resins. Yes, though the flexural strength was good, the impact strength was very low, and also these dentures, they are not radio opaque. Okay, so you, to make it radio opaque, to make it more resistant, I mean to the impact forces. Okay, so for all these they used to introduce so many materials. So in recent years many reinforcements have been done to this polymethyl methacrylate resin, like polymers have been reinforced with butadiene, styrene, okay, and we have been using glass fibers, aramid fibers, polyethylene, carbon fibers, zirconia nanoparticles, silver nanoparticles, titanium nanoparticles. So, then you have also been using barium sulfates and triphenyl bismuth. This is mainly to bring about an radio opacity in the resins. Okay, and also nowadays we have numerous flexible denture materials coming into use by the incorporation of nylon into the denture based materials. Yes, so like if you see a glass fiber reinforced resin, it has a very high fatigue resistance, high impact strength and high flexural strength. So all the physical properties have been found to improve by the addition of these glass fibers. Yes, and rapid heat polymerization, because I told you it's going to take around 2 hours, 3 hours, 8 hours for polymerization. So now they are introducing this rapid heat polymerized resins. Okay, where you can immediately they polymerized in boiling water immediately after packing. Okay, so it just takes around 20 minutes. Yes, so we can see the various advantages of these denture based resins, the various types which have been used and how they can keep evolving. Denture based material as such have evolved, and in that particularly the PMMA has evolved so much and it keeps evolving, and in every year you have new reinforcements being done to this PMA resin. So this has not just limited itself, this material has not just limited itself to this material has not limited itself just to the denture bases which we have used for replacing the teeth, but has found its application in so many other fields, like the denture liners, the denture bases, the various tissue conditioners which we use. It's being used as a repair material. The pit and fissure sealants what we use, the composite resins what we use, again has this denture based material. The various impression materials, custom trays, splints, the various maxillofacial prostheses, veneers, cements, adhesives. So like everywhere, some or the other way, this denture based resins have found their application. Like especially if you take repair resin, okay, rubber reinforced acrylic has been used for repair of this resins, okay. And we have also been using denture based resin as liners, okay, by incorporating silicone based denture based materials, okay. You have resilience which are of soft type, okay, so which can also act as tissue conditioners, okay. And you also have permanent soft liners. You have soft liners which are temporary, okay, and you have permanent. So if it has to be permanent, then you add silicone to it. It can be in the form of polyvinyl acetate or silicone, okay. So here in this diagram you can see this is the denture, this is the bone, this is the mucosa. So between those two you will be adding this lining material, right? So this is a tissue conditioner, okay. So when do you use it? Especially for a shorter period of time, like the oral tissues have been abused because the denture is not fitting properly, then in such conditions you can coat this denture with this tissue conditioner and then give it for the patient. So again in this composition is slightly different. You can see in the powder, instead of polymethyl methacrylate, it is polyethyl methacrylate, and the liquid contains butyl phthalate, okay. So you have polyethyl methacrylate and butyl phthalate as the monomer, okay. So you have a gel which is applied, you have a powder and the liquid. Can you mix it and then you can coat it over the denture surface, intaglio surface, and then you can place it in the patient, okay. It provides a cushioning effect for the patient, so especially during the forces of mastication. Yes, so these are some of the various uses of the denture based resins in fields other than denture bases. Yes, so there are numerous recent advances taking place, not just in the materials but our understanding of polymerization system, okay. So we should keep updating ourselves so that we keep giving newer and newer materials for the patients, so that it gives them the best prognosis, thereby restoring the function and aesthetics of patients. So the take home message is we have to understand the basics, okay. After understanding the basics, we have to keep updating ourselves, so that we know the recent innovations, recent advances in this field, so we give the best treatment for the patient. Yes, so I have taken my references mainly from Phillips Science of Dental Materials, Coombe, okay. I also use Craig, okay, and Lippincot's book on clinical aspects of dental materials. There's a book by McCabe, O'Brien, and then there's another book by Van Noot. So these are some of the important references which you can use, especially the recent editions you can use for updating yourself, okay. So keep updating, and thank you.